Hello, welcome to the Awakening Report. I am your host, Doug Hamp. I have a special guest on today. I'm really excited. I have Dr. Kent Hovind waiting in the wings to join us, and I have to say this is really exciting show because I learned a lot from Dr. Hovind many years ago. I've been very grateful for all that he's done for his ministry of defending the truth of creation. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know him better and to kind of swapping some stories and just learning more from him. So, Dr. Hovind, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, sir. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So you are now in Alabama, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Little Lenox, Alabama, population 35.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's a pretty big population there.
Yeah, we're straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good.
Search lower, get a magnifying glass and search Lower Alabama and find you might find us.
That's very good. Yeah. Well, you and I met some years ago in Garden Grove, California, Stealing the Mind conference, and
Yes,
I was really impacted by all that you had to say on creation science. I found your arguments, your reasoning to be very thorough and encouraging. And I think it's very difficult in this day and age where we have so much science that is denouncing the young Earth creation perspective. And so I'd like to take some time and talk about young Earth creationism. I wrote a book on this some years ago, thanks to some of your inspiration. So I appreciate that. And again, when we take a deep look at the Bible, we have to come to this big question of, okay, how old is the Earth according to the Bible? And
right.
that is definitely a question that deserves some attention. So maybe you can start us off with how you got into this. I know you were a teacher for many years as a high school teacher, and then you've been doing a lot of teaching on creationism ever since.
Yes, sir. I taught high school science and math for 15 years. I moved to Pensacola, Florida 30 years ago, and the neighbor kid asked if I'd like to take the paper. He was a paper boy. I said, no, I don't have a parakeet. Only thing I can think it's good for. And anyway, he threw one in the yard once in a while, trying to talk us into taking it. And an article came out in one of the papers that he threw in the yard that said dinosaur bones were found in Montana from 80 million years ago. Typical propaganda. And so I wrote my first ever letter to the editor. I said, no, dinosaur bones that were found were from the flood in the days of Noah. First place, dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago. Secondly, the Earth is not millions of years old. And fossils don't form unless they're buried rapidly. I mean, how many animals died today all around the world? Millions. How many are going to fossilize? None. They don't fossilize unless they're buried quickly. So I covered in my letter to the editor about the evolution is a religion. It's not a science. Anyway, they published my letter and started a war in Pensacola. People started writing and calling, and it went back and forth for about 6 months. And finally, some students at the University of West Florida in Pensacola said, hey, would you come debate one of our professors? We're reading all your letters in class. I said, I've never had a debate in my life except with my wife, and I lose those every time. Sure. So I did my first ever debate, and there were about 1,000 people there, and a bunch of pastors came, and everybody said, man, would you come share this information at our church? And so that led very quickly to a full-time ministry of me speaking on the topic of creation, evolution, and dinosaurs, particularly. We have Dinosaur Adventureland here in Lenox, Alabama. 140 acres. It's a blast. Come on down and see the place.
That's awesome. Wow. So were a lot of the pastors really encouraged by what you're saying? Were they surprised that there was so much evidence in favor of creationism, or what was the general reaction?
I think most people in general, and most preachers, most Christians, are very confused about the simple topic of the age of the earth. How old is this earth? And where do dinosaurs fit? I like to ask Christians, I say, do you believe the Bible? They say, well, yeah. I say, did the Bible say God created everything in 6 days? Well, yeah. I say, when did dinosaurs live? And it finally starts to dawn on them. They have two completely different tracks running in their mind. One, they say dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. I say, excuse me, the Bible says God made everything in 6 days. Exodus 20:11, everything in 6 days. The Bible says that man brought death into the world. The reason we have death and suffering is because of Adam and Eve's sin. Man brought death into the world. God didn't make it this way. Man wrecked it. And the Bible couldn't be more clear. Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning. Matthew 19:4, Mark 10:6. So I remember as a Christian, young Christian myself, reading and being confused because I majored in science and all this stuff. And I said, somebody is lying to me. I'm reading my Bible and I'm reading all my science books, and I was confused for many years as a young Christian. I said, somebody's lying, and I don't know who it is, and I don't know how to figure it out. But yeah, the Bible is absolutely true as written. One thing I've learned to be cautious of is the words young earth creation. 1,000 is not young. 6,000 is a long time. I was trying to find this place 500 years ago. 500. 1,000 years ago, the Vikings are going around beating up on everybody. 1,000. 6,000, long time. The brain can't hardly stretch that far. Millions, your brain can definitely not stretch that far. Or billions, impossible. It's not. Earth, the whole universe cannot be billions of years old for all sorts of simple scientific reasons, which I cover in my seminar. I give I think about 70 now reasons we have that prove the Earth cannot be billions of years old. Now, the Bible dates clearly add up to 6,000. The Bible says Adam was 130 when Seth was born, and Seth was 105 when Enos was born. I mean, the dates are right there, Genesis chapter 5. Just read them. It certainly does not teach the billions. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I think it's fascinating. I've been doing a little research on cosmic inflation, and I find it to be a very interesting proposition. Basically, that the expansion of the universe is happening faster than the speed of light. And that has, in my opinion, very big implications. Essentially, that the universe could have expanded at a rate much, much faster than many scientists have accounted for. And again, I haven't done hardcore research. I've been just kind of reading some articles and formulating some thoughts. But it seems probable to me that this could sort of unlock part of this discrepancy that we have between those who are pushing the Big Bang as the end all get all of this story. But if we certainly make the big assumption that God spoke and things happened, let's call that the Big Bang for simplicity's sake at the moment. But if that were the case, then you have this expanding universe that is expanding faster than the speed of light. That means it didn't take 15 billion light years, or 15 billion years, for the universe to get as big as it is today. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but if you do, I'd love to hear them. It'd be fascinating. I
covered that in pretty great detail on my video number 7. My seminar series is 18 hours long on 7 DVDs. Video 7, I talk about the speed of light problem. 17 times in the Bible, God says he stretched out the heavens. Just type in the word stretched in a concordance and you'll say, well, the Bible says he stretched out the heavens. So the Bible clearly teaches he made the earth first on day 1, and then on day 4 he made the stars. So the earth came before the stars, according to the Bible. According to evolution, stars came before the earth. And then 17 times it says God stretched out the heavens. Now, they're seeing a red shift from almost every direction we look in space. We see a red shift. That is being interpreted as the Doppler effect of light. If you're sitting at a stop sign and a car is coming toward you, as it comes in, the sound waves are compressed and it makes a higher pitch sound. It'll come in. When it passes you, it drops in pitch because the sound waves are being refracted or stretched. So you hear that, or a train can go by. As soon as it passes you, it drops in pitch, called the Doppler effect. The theory is that this probably works with light also, and I think it probably does. I don't argue that. I don't know that it's been proven, but let's assume it's true. If a star is moving toward us, the light waves would be compressed, higher pitch, blue frequency. If it's going away from us, they would be stretched, refracted, and be the red frequency. So they look at a star and say, wow, this is red shifted, therefore the star is moving away. Could very well be true and probably is true. I don't see how you could prove such a thing, but let's assume it's true. Well, why would all the stars in the universe appear to be giving a red shift? Well, they're being stretched out, like God said. And when they tell you that they say the universe is 13.772 billion years old, I say, excuse me, how did you measure that? You cannot measure the distance to a star beyond about 100 light years. If I told you, with my two eyes being 4 inches apart, I can tell the distance to that tree over there is 85 feet. Maybe, because I'm doing triangulation in my brain. I'm getting 2 lines of sight on a third point. How far out can that third point be before it starts to become not possible to tell the distance? Well, watch my video 7, but I point out that 100 light years is just about the max they can measure with parallax trigonometry. That's using Earth's orbit around the sun as the base, which is 816 light minute base. And it's just, the stars probably are billions of light years away. I don't know. Nobody knows how far away they are, and we don't know that they're billions of years old because of their distance. How old was Adam the day God made him?
I think about 0 seconds.
He was 0.
Yeah.
Did he look 0? No. Full man, full-grown woman, full-grown garden.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't hand Adam some seeds and say, "Here, plant these quick. You've got to have a garden." There was already fruit growing. It has to be. He's got to eat, So a mature creation is the only logical way that it'll work. Adam and Eve were full grown. The garden was already full of fruit and stuff. Everything was fully mature. So that they're trying to tell us the Earth is billions of years old. All the reasons they have for teaching that are absolutely silly. And I cover that in my seminar, number 1, how to prove the Earth is not billions of years old.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of questions. If it's not, what about carbon dating? What about the Ice Age? Where does that fit in? How about Grand Canyon? What about dinosaurs? Where do they fit? And that's why my seminar is 18 hours long. It goes fast.
Yeah, I know it's hard to reduce it down to 1 hour. So where can people get your resources? What's your website?
drdino.com. D-R-D-I-N-O, no period. drdino.com. My YouTube channel is Kent, K-E-N-T, Kent Hovind Official. Hovind is a Norwegian name, H-O-V-I-N-D. Kent Hovind Official. And they can get YouTube. We do a lot of YouTube every night. I have a debate tonight on my YouTube channel at 7 o'clock. But I've done 200 debates now against atheists and evolutionists. Those are fun. I do one of those every day. Every Wednesday night, we do a program called Whack an Atheist.
Okay.
So we take different atheists and show some of the things they have taught and just whack them in love with I have SpongeBob and a little hammer and smack them, saying, "Wake up, boy. This is not common sense, Whack an atheist." It's really got the atheist stirred up.
Yeah. Now, do you think atheism would really have much of a leg to stand on if it were not for the ideas of evolution, cosmic, biological, whatever kind of evolution you want to call it?
There's absolutely none. There's only 2 choices. Somebody made the world, or the world made itself. Nobody's thought of a third choice. Okay, if you think of one, I'd love to hear it. Somebody made this place, or nobody made it. I could say somebody made this coffee cup, or nobody made it.
Mm-hmm.
Think of a third choice. So, those who would like to believe that God did not create the world are faced with the option of a problem of explaining, okay, well then how did it get here? A, the world is here. B, everything about it is falling apart, winding down. The Earth is spinning, but it's slowing down. Okay, the sun is burning out its fuel. The moon is slowly moving away from the Earth. The oceans are becoming more salty all the time. The continents are eroding down. Erosion brings dirt down, not up. There are all kinds of indicators that say this Earth is slowly wearing out. Okay, well then, you can't say it's infinitely old. That would be a problem. All those things put a time limit. If I told you this ink pen was 10 trillion years old, you say, come on, it's made of plastic. Plastics weren't invented until World War II. Got to be less than 70 years old. I say, okay, you got me on that one. It's less than 70. They say, hold it. Plastics, react very quickly to UV light and stuff like that. They probably wouldn't last more than 5 years before it would crack and check and discolor. Okay, you probably through a process of simple logic could prove that this is not billions of years old. You could probably prove it's not even 100 years old. Pretty simply.
Mm-hmm.
I could demonstrate pretty simply this Earth cannot possibly be billions of years old. It just, if they want to believe that, they can believe whatever they want, but it's not science, not even science. So if the Earth is indeed young, like the Bible says, 6,000, that raises interesting questions. What about Grand Canyon?
Mm-hmm.
What about the Ice Age? What about dinosaurs? And that's one of my favorite topics. Our website is Dr. Dino. Our theme park we're building here, Dinosaur Adventureland. Campground Science Center, and it's a lot of fun.
When is that going to be open?
It's been open for a year. We've had 70 76 people baptized already.
Fantastic.
Saved, had one today. People give their heart to the Lord, get saved, and then get baptized to show their salvation to the rest of the world, and start reading the Bible and serve God.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah. So obviously dinosaurs are very interesting creatures. The term dinosaur wasn't coined until the 1840s, I believe it was. Terrible lizard. What would you suggest they were before that? Or what were they thought of as before that?
Probably the word dragon would be the most commonly used. People called it, and different cultures would have different names for them. In the Bible, in Job chapter 40, it says there's an animal called behemoth that has a tail like a cedar tree. And it says he's the biggest animal God ever made. I think that would probably be the Brachiosaurus or something like that. In Job 41, it talks about an animal called Leviathan. And I do a whole video just on Leviathan, the fire-breathing dragon of Job 41. I think probably a T-Rex or something similar to that. So, see, before the flood came, the Bible says the people lived to be 900 years old. That's what it says. And most ancient cultures that have roots that go way back, they all talk about what's called a golden age. They have legends, and they'll say, oh yeah, boys and girls, man used to live to be 1,000. Why would all the ancient cultures have this similar legend of a golden age? Could it be because it's true that man used to live to be nearly 1,000? What the Bible says, 969 was Methuselah, the oldest one. Well, it's a simple biological fact that reptiles never stop growing. Reptiles grow all their life. They never stop. Humans stop growing at 16 or 18. You're going to quit growing vertically. Some go horizontally after that, but reptiles never stop growing. So what would happen to an animal that never stops growing if it could live in a climate where it could actually live to be 900? It would be huge. The dinosaurs were just big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, not millions of years ago.
Sounds pretty fair. We have a question from our audience. They're following online, and so this is the question. Other than using the Bible, does Dr. Hovind have another method to measure the age of the Earth?
Sure. Well, I would point out there are two basic lines of thought. You can take either one you'd like. Scripturally, the Bible clearly teaches about 6,000. And certainly you can look at history would be another line of thought. The oldest history we have, accurate recorded history, goes back about 5,000 or 6,000 years. The oldest civilizations that we have, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the natives of people of India, the Australian Aborigines. There's some gross exaggerations in some of these cultures, but they all go back just a few thousand years. Why is there no indication of any culture tracing their roots back millions of years? They all go back just a few thousand, and the further back you get, the fuzzier it gets, and the more exaggeration you get in it. But historically, the oldest reliable historical records are about 4,400 years old. So if you look at just the Earth itself, we're on this big, huge ball, 7,928 miles in diameter, and we see it's eroding. The mountains are eroding. Every time it rains, stuff washes into the ocean, and the mountains are eroding down. Now, there is a mountain building process going on, but as far as sedimentary rock, that would be very limited for how long you can have this erosion process going on, because the mountain building underneath that would be igneous or metamorphic rock, or igneous rock, I guess. So when you look at the erosion process, you say, whoa, this can't be millions of years old. When you look at canyon formation, you say, whoa, this can't be millions of years old. For instance, Grand Canyon, the biggest one above sea level on the world, is about 5,000 feet deep. If you plugged up Grand Canyon right now, that would take a lot of dirt. But if you plug up the whole canyon, fill it in, a giant lake would form on the northeast corner northeast of Grand Canyon. It'd be called Grand Lake or Hopi Lake. We have pictures of this on our seminar series you can watch, or you can go to Walt Brown's website, creationscience.com. He's got a lot of good research on this. Grand Lake would be 5,000 feet deep. Once it finally got deep enough, it went over the top of the ridge. Like all lakes, if they get too deep, they go over somewhere. Mm-hmm. It starts going over, man, it's done. You're going to wash out, you're going to make a giant crack in it. Mm-hmm. It is a washed out spillway, a ginormous one, 277 miles long. But of Grand Canyon, the Kaibab Plateau is about 7,000 or 8,000 feet above sea level. The river starts cutting the canyon at less than 3,000 feet. Well, now hold it. The river starts at 2,800 feet at Page, Arizona, and goes downhill from there, comes out at Lost Wages, Nevada at about 1,000 feet lower than that, 1,800 feet elevation. But between those 2 points, from 2,800 to 1,800, where it's going downhill, there's a big ridge in the way, a big bump, a dam, 200 miles wide and a mile high, but a dam nonetheless. And so the erosion that we see of canyons and features like that says, look, this has not been going on for millions of years. Things are getting saltier every day. Mineral salts wash off the soil into the oceans. Streams and rivers have a slight salinity content because of the mineral salts being lost out of the ground. That ends up in the ocean. Then evaporation takes out water only. The ocean, giant distillation pond, and it's bringing in salty water a little bit, evaporating out fresh water. So the oceans gradually become saltier. Today, the oceans are 3.6% salt average. Well, that could not have been going on for billions of years, because they would be much saltier. So on my video number 1, I think on the old one, I cover about 40, but now they've discovered probably 70 different ways to prove the Earth cannot be billions of years old. The moon goes around the Earth. I think everybody agrees with that, except for the flat earthers. Crazy, drive me crazy.
Yes, I understand.
The moon goes around the Earth once every 28 days, roughly. But the moon is gradually getting farther away from the Earth. The moon is leaving us. I don't think anybody argues with that. The moon is leaving us a couple inches a year, 1.7 inches a year, whatever the number is. Okay, well, that means it used to be closer. If you bring the moon in closer, even just 1.7 inches a year, and do that for millions of years, whoa, you get a problem in a hurry. Because as the moon gets closer, the tides get higher because of the inverse square law of gravitational attraction. The tides would wash away the whole world, or wash it down to one big swamp quickly if the moon were a lot closer. So the receding moon is another scientific indicator that this Earth cannot be billions of years old. You look up at the sun and say, wow, the sun is burning. I think everybody would agree on that. They've done measurements over long hundreds of years. They've done this and said the sun is burning about 5 million tons of fuel every second. That's what it takes to keep the lights on. 5 million tons per second. Well, how far back in time could you go adding 5 million tons to the sun before you'd have a problem? 5 million tons a second. Start running the clock backwards in your mind, adding 5 million tons a second to the sun, and you're going to say, whoa, this can't be billions years old. Because the sun would be both bigger and heavier. That's the part. If the sun was heavier, it had more gravity, it would suck all the planets in. The balance between the sun's gravitational pull and our gravitational pull and our speed is a very delicate balance. Could be easily upset. So I think the sun burning, the population of the Earth is another one. Today there are 7.4 billion people. Well, back in the year, at the time Christ was here, in the year 0, there was only about 250 million. World population, 1/4 billion. In 1600, the world population was 1 billion, I believe. In 1800, it was 1 billion. 1930, it got up to 2 billion. I do a chart on my seminar on this, showing the population back through history. The population growth curve of the Earth clearly indicates man's only been here less than 5,000 years to make all the people we have today.
Wow.
I can go on all day on that topic, but
no, I love it. I think it's fascinating. There really are some very powerful proofs. I think the salinity of the oceans is a wonderful one. You said is what, 3.2%? Is that correct?
3.6 is the current.
Okay, 3.6%.
It varies widely across the world, but the average is about 3.6%.
And I presume that we know the rate at which it's becoming saltier. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, several things to consider, probably quite a few things to consider. But yeah, the rate of salinity increase has been carefully studied for a long time, hundreds of years. There's not only the water running off the continents causing this, there's salt domes underneath. Huge salt plumes in the crust of the Earth that sometimes are leaking or leaching into the oceans. All of the processes are adding salt. There's no good way to get rid of this salt. Most of the animals that live in salt water are annoyed by it and have to have a system to get rid of it. Some of them salt crystals, and it comes out around their eyes like tears. Some turtles do that. Some have to excrete salt through their urine. The salt. Now, there are freshwater bass and saltwater bass. There are freshwater crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles. There are quite a few types of animals that exist in both the fresh and saltwater type or kind or species. Maybe species is kind of strong. But they might have had a common ancestor, a crocodile. So the fact that some animals have adapted to salt water is certainly, I think, reasonable. But if that's happened slowly over the last 4,400 years since Noah's flood, if the whole world was fresh water in Noah's flood, all the animals would be fine. Noah didn't have to bring any water on the ark. Just throw the bucket overboard. You got plenty. Or a system where every time you hit a wave, it pumps itself full, fills all your tanks automatically. Being 600 years old when he built that boat, would be smart enough to figure out a system to self-replenish the water supply.
Yes.
So the salt water gradually becoming saltier has become, A, it's an indicator the Earth is not billions of years old. But B, it's very simple to explain why we have some saltwater, some freshwater animals, that saltwater bass, freshwater bass. Some go back and forth between the two. That's a well-studied phenomena of saltwater. But going from a freshwater crocodile to a saltwater crocodile, for instance, a very minor change compared to going from a rock to a crocodile, which is what evolution teaches.
Right.
It does. They teach we all came from a rock.
Yeah.
You've got to have help to be that dumb. You could not have done that on your own.
That's really funny. A couple years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Ethiopia, and I got to go see Lucy. And Lucy was not that exciting, quite frankly.
About 3 feet tall.
Most of her was missing, and so obviously for those who don't know, Lucy, the supposed one of the supposed missing links in human evolution. But it's amazing, that there's so much faith put into human evolution, or just evolution as a whole. And yet, as you just rightfully pointed out, it starts with a rock, and we're going from non-organic material. Even if the Earth somehow got here by its own, by chance, you still have to account for going from rocks to DNA. And it astounds me that people just seem to gloss over this fact that DNA has information in it, right? I mean, we have our computers, and we can talk about the evolution of the computer, but it was smart people who've been working tenaciously to make these a better product. And it's taken millions and millions of man hours to make the computer, and computers what they are today. And yet, when it comes to the computer that we are, that our cells are, etc., somehow people just completely, they conveniently ignore this fact that we are very, very sophisticated beings. But it all just happened by chance. I mean, it really is quite astounding.
Well, the Bible says in 2 Peter chapter 3 that in the last days, which I think we're probably in, the scoffers would be here, and they would be willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood and the coming judgment of God. They don't want to admit there was a creation because that would involve some accountability. See, if God created the world, then he owns it, belongs to him. And he might have some rules, like thou shalt not. Rules. So they deny the creator rather than face the creator. And then they deny the flood idea because that flood can explain all the geology we see around us. Why is the earth stratified? Why are there layers? They tell the kids in earth science class, which I taught for 15 years, they say, boys and girls, the layer on top is younger than the layer on the bottom. I say, really? Where'd this top layer come from? Outer space? How could the top layer be younger than the bottom layer? All the layers had to be here at the same time. They got reshuffled during Noah's flood, but the top layer is not younger. All the layers are the same age. All over the world, they find petrified trees standing up, running through all these layers. I say, guys, if there's a petrified tree standing up, running through all these layers, you can't say the layers are different ages. By a few hours or a few months, but not millions of years. And they need to watch my video number 6 about Noah's flood, where I cover a lot of material on that. Get drdino.com, or they can call our office, 855-BIG-DINO, like a big dinosaur. 855-BIG-DINO, extension 1. My whole video series is 18 hours. It's only $50. You can watch it, record it, copy it, send it back, get your money back, minus shipping.
That's quite a deal.
Yeah.
That is
Show
quite a
me,
deal.
show me a better deal.
Yeah, I really encourage people to go to drdino.com and get that, because it's a wonderful resource. I watched your older series and learned a tremendous amount. It
Good.
really helps, because I remember being I was studying at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and I was confronted by Isaiah chapters 40 and 41, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is a fire breathing dragon doing in the Bible?
Right.
And I just didn't have the resources to understand it. And then some people introduced me to your stuff, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I think you talked about the bombardier beetle and some other things, fireflies, if I remember correctly. And it just opened my eyes to understanding that there's a whole different perspective that we can have if we'll just take time, slow down, and say, okay, what evidence do we have? And so again, I just want to thank you for that. I really appreciate that, because it really helped me a tremendous amount. But changing our perspectives is never easy. And somebody asked a question. This is from Dan. He says, most Christian colleges, unfortunately, teach that the flood was a local event in order to accommodate the time. Therefore, young pastors are preaching that from the pulpit. What advice would you give to some of these young pastors who are preaching about that the flood was a local event versus a worldwide event?
Well, I would point out that quite a few people in the Bible went to schools that taught them things that were wrong. Joseph went to the Egyptian schools. Moses went to the Babylonian schools, where he was certainly taught all kinds of heathen stuff. Not Moses, Daniel.
Okay.
He had to go to these. Moses was raised up in the Egyptian schools.
Right. Yes.
Many people through history have had to go to schools that taught them simply dumb things, and you have to overcome that and say, "Thus saith the Lord." I disagree. Here's coming out of the Egyptian schools, writing the first 5 books of the Bible. So the pastors that are teaching it's a local flood, I think it's absolute hypocrisy to say that. Jesus believed in a worldwide flood and taught so. And why would God tell Noah to build a boat? If the boat was 500 feet long, that'd take a long time. Look, Noah, he could say, your valley's gonna flood. Move. How far could you move with 100 years warning?
Probably a long way.
Anywhere you wanted, right? The whole local flood idea is absolutely insane. It's a worldwide flood.
Yeah. I mean, it says it went, well over, was it 10 cubits, I believe, over the highest mountain.
15 cubits.
15, thank you. 15 cubits over the highest mountain. So it was worldwide. I mean, water is always going to find its level, and it's not going to just stop at the border. Oh, I've got to stop here because this is supposed to be local.
Right.
This is another question from Chris. He's asked, do you think evolution will ever be removed from textbooks at any point, since a growing number of scientists and professors are skeptical of evolution?
I don't think it's going to be removed. This is a battle we're probably not going to win. I wish we would. I've tried awful hard for 30 years. But the atheists and evolutionists understand full well that they have to defend this theory no matter how dumb it is, because the only other option is a creator. They don't want there to be a creator. So they'll deny the obvious. They'll believe they came from a rock rather than believe God made them. I was at Berkeley University. Nobody would debate me. We tried. 146 professors were contacted. They all refused to debate in front of Berkeley. So students just scheduled me to come speak. So I spoke for like an hour and had an hour Q&A after that. It's one of the videotapes you can get on our video series called Berkeley Finally Hears the Truth. Afterwards, I'm out at my videotape table selling videos and books and stuff. And this big old huge football player from Berkeley came out there, and he was fuming. He was so angry. He was shaking. He said, "Evolution is a fact." I said, "Calm down, son. You're going to blow a gasket here." He said, "But evolution's a fact." I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Suppose what I said tonight was true. Suppose you decided to accept that maybe God made the world. Would that change your lifestyle any?" He said, "That would change everything." I said, "Okay, I agree. Now, have you accepted evolution because you really know of some evidence of any animal becoming different? Or life starting from non-living material? Did you accept this theory because you really have evidence, or because you like the freedom it gives you from God? He was real quiet for almost a minute. Finally, he said, I like evolution because I'm horny. Son, every male of every species, from termites to whales, understands that. The reason to reject God. God made the world. Wrote a book of how he did it. And a book about, tells about a flood of how it was destroyed. And that explains the canyons and the stratification. And there's no reason to accept this silly idea that we all came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago. It's dumb. Give it up. But see, he doesn't want to give it up because he likes his lifestyle of freedom from God's rules. Okay, well, then I can't help you.
Wow. I really like how you keep it personal and you keep it to the point, because it's not just for the knowledge of the science stuff, which is very interesting, but it's that supposed knowledge is keeping people away from the Creator, and that is really the goal of this whole thing. I remember some years ago I went out to do some street witnessing, and I had really been brushing up on all of my apologetics and younger, creation, evolution kind of stuff. And I went and I approached this person and started talking, and I'm like, well, where do you think everything came from? Where did the earth come from? And he's like, it's always just been here. And I remember getting so frustrated with him, because I thought, wait a second, even, the best evolutionary scientists don't believe in the steady state universe. They believe in the Big Bang, and so I was frustrated that he didn't even know enough about his side of the argument. And consequently, I never got to share the good news with him because I got sidetracked on my own little thing. And I think that's a really good reminder to us that the goal here is to share the good news of the kingdom of God with people. And creation science is a wonderful way to do that. But the goal is not more creation science knowledge. The goal is to know the Creator. Another question from Dan. He says, what is the number one punchline that Dr. Hovind uses when speaking with old earthers? What puts them off balance? So if you have a silver bullet or something like that has worked well.
Well, I put him against Jesus. I don't want to argue with him. Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning. Is that true? And they'll say, well, no. Okay, well, then you're calling Jesus a liar. The Bible clearly says in Romans 5 and 1 Corinthians 15 that man brought death into the world. I said, do you believe that? Was there any death here before man got here? And all the old earthers have to say, yes, yeah, of course, billions. Billions. I say, okay, God wrote on a rock with his own finger and handed the rock to Moses when he was done. He wrote the 10 Commandments. God wrote it on a rock with his finger and said, in 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in the midst. I said, do you believe that? Do you believe God made everything in 6 days, like it says in Exodus 20:11 and Exodus 31:17? And they'll have to say, well, no. Okay, well, then you're calling God a liar. You're calling Jesus a liar, calling the Apostle Paul a liar, which you're welcome to do. But I just want to point out that is what you're doing. You're them liars. Just to accept a theory that somebody taught you in school, which has no scientific backing at all. So I find by putting them against Jesus, it really makes some of them stop and think, like, why do I believe this? Who taught me this anyway? Why did I swallow it? Don't lie.
What would you say to people that say, well, all the scientists believe this, right? This is something that people throw around a lot, that all major scientists believe in this theory of evolution. How can you come against that? Or what's a good comeback for that?
Several different ways to approach that one. One, first of all, it's not true. Not all scientists believe it. Secondly, even if all scientists did believe it, that doesn't make it true. All the scientists in North Korea think communism is wonderful. Does that make communism wonderful? Because all the scientists believe it? No, that means you get executed if you don't agree with them. All the teachers and scientists in Nazi Germany during World War II thought Hitler was a great guy and Nazism was perfect. And the Jews were an inferior species. Does that make it true? Or does that mean there's a bunch of people who believe, 55 million Germans who believed, in Hitler. During World War II, 110 million Russians followed Joseph Stalin. And you'd have a hard time finding one single teacher to stand up and say, I don't think communism works. I don't think Joseph Stalin's a nice guy. I bet you couldn't find anybody that would say that.
Mm-hmm.
Proof. Does that prove communism's true? Or does that prove they've done a really good job of squelching any opposition?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happened in America. They squelch any opposition to their theory, their religion. Evolution is actually a religion. It's not a science. There's no scientific evidence to show how any animal could produce a different kind of animal. None.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. It's not science. They can believe it if they want. That's why it's a religion. It's certainly not part of science.
Yeah, well said.
Or your listeners know of any evolutionists who'd like to debate. I've had 200 debates now. Many of them are posted live on our YouTube channel, Kent Hovind Official. And you can watch them or get them on videotape. There's 20 of them available on DVD, not videotape. I'm old school.
DVD. We forgive you. It's okay. Technology changes quickly. I mean, you know, I use Facebook, and that makes me old, I think. You know, the young people are using TikTok and other things. So whatever. I don't know what those are. Here's a question from a guy named Scott. He says, how does an eternal being, or how do eternal beings, I'm not sure, have a start? So I guess he's asking, how does God or an eternal being have a start? What would be your response to that?
I was debating at Embry-Riddle University, Aeronautical University in south of Jacksonville, Florida. And I was debating three professors at once, 3-on-1.
That's fair.
I said, it could be 800 to 1, brother. They're wrong. Okay, God's right. But the smart aleck professor said, where did God come from? You can Google that, Where Did God Come From by Kent Hovind. My answer is 2 minutes long. And it was from the Lord. I tell you, it's just so true. It's just exactly what the Bible teaches. The words come from indicate time limitations and distance limitations. God's not limited by time, space, or matter. We are stuck in time, space, and matter. I cannot go back. Have you ever wished you could go back 2 seconds and undo the dumb thing you just did? Have you ever wished you could just go back 2 seconds? Well, yeah, all of us have, right? We can't. We're stuck in time. This is 2020 in Lenox, Alabama, and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't go back to 2019 or back to 1845. So we're stuck in time, space, or matter. God is not stuck in time. This is not 2020 in heaven. There's no time there, which is, I think, impossible for the human brain to absorb such a thought, but that's what the Bible teaches. God is not limited by time. God has already been to your funeral. He's already seen it all. He knows everything, the beginning, the end, the middle, knows it all at the same time. So we are stuck in time. We are stuck in space. I cannot be 2 places at one time. There's been many times I wished I could, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
We're stuck in matter. I'm stuck inside this body. I can't get out of it. So time, space, and matter is a trinity. Each of them is also a trinity. Time has 3 parts to it: past, present, future. You cannot have just one. It is not possible to only have one. If you have any of the time, you now have past, present, future. Space has 3 dimensions: length, width, and height. It is not possible to have just 1 or 2 of them. Like I say, I taught geometry for years. There's no such thing as a circle. It's an imaginary construct. As soon as you draw it on paper, now the thickness of your pencil lead just turned it into a cylinder. So there's really no such thing as a circle, except in imagination. You can all kinds of, geometry constructs, plane geometry, circles, triangles, etc. But really, they don't exist. Okay, they're only imagination, and they're practical for we can use them for practical things. But so time, God had to create that. Space, 3-dimensional space. If you have one, you have all 3. You can't have one without the other. And matter. Matter has 3 phases: solid, liquid, and gas. Plasma is just a hotter gas. So you have those 3: time, space, matter, and have to come into existence in that order. If you had matter before you had space, where would you put it?
Mm-hmm.
If you had matter and space before you had time, when would you put it?
Mm-hmm.
So God created time, and then matter, or space, and then matter. They have to come into existence in that order. So you actually have a trinity of trinities. I think God's trying to teach you something about his character.
Mm-hmm.
But so the fact, how did an infinite creator get a start? just the question is invalid because it indicates he had to have a start. If he's completely outside of our time, space, or matter, he's beyond my comprehension. It's like saying the guy that made this computer has to be in the computer running around changing the numbers and pictures on the screen. No, he's not. The guy who made the computer is outside the computer. The guy who made the car is not in the car. He's outside of the car. He designed it, created it, and he's outside of it. So the God who made this world is outside of this world. He's not limited by time, space, or matter. We are. And it's very difficult for us to even comprehend that. And it's very tempting for us to always try to put our limitations on him.
Isn't that the truth?
Fortunately, he became a man and lived here so we can understand more about him. And he wrote a book so we can understand more about him. But I think for our little 3-pound brain to try to squeeze in the infinite God is going to be a real tough squeeze. I don't think that's going to happen. Nobody's going to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the perspective of a relatively young Earth, whatever term we want to use for that, but you know, not the millions and billions that people are suggesting. That's a big pill to swallow. I mean, what you're calling people to do is to radically change their paradigm about their worldview. And so I'm kind of, this is kind of a personal question, but I'm curious if there's been something in your theological toolbox that you've had to re-examine, because that's what you're calling people to do. You're challenging people to rethink, even Christians who would have an old Earth perspective, to rethink and say, no, this is actually what the Bible is actually saying. Is there something in your life that you've had to look at it differently and say, maybe I didn't understand everything, you know, something theologically speaking?
Oh, many times. You know, I'm always, I just want the truth. Okay. I was raised Mennonite, Methodist, and Lutheran. By the time I was 16, I was pretty thoroughly confused. I baptized, catechized, homogenized, circumcised, pasteurized, you know. And somebody said, Kent, are you going to heaven? I said, I don't know. I hope so. I want to. They said, have you ever sinned? I said, well, yeah. Well, then you're going to hell. It's real simple. I said, no, wait a minute. Won't God put my good against my bad? They said, what judge on earth would do that? If you murdered somebody and you went to court and said, look, judge, I only murdered that one guy. I didn't look at all the people I did not murder. Would they weigh your good against your bad? No. Okay. So I had to change my theology on what does it take to go to heaven. Salvation is a gift from God. There's only 2 religions in the whole world. That's Cain and Abel. Cain brought his fruit and vegetables and said, hey, God, look what I did for you. God would not take it. Abel brought a lamb, an innocent substitute, a sacrifice, and God took it. So I had to change. I thought that heaven was something we work for, and you know, if we're good, we go there. Not at all true. And then about probably 7 or 8 years ago, I had to change my theology on end times. What does the Bible say is coming next? I used to believe for 40 years we could get raptured out of here any minute. Jesus is coming back, you know, and there's all kinds of songs in the songbook. It could happen in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye. Mm-hmm. It's not true. We're going to be here for the tribulation time.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had to make that same change, and it was not easy.
No.
I was more popular as a pre-tribber than a post-tribber. So
yeah, me too. Really. many churches shut me off because I changed. But Matthew 28 at the beginning, or 24, at the beginning of the chapter, Jesus' disciples asked him, Lord, when are you coming and what's the sign? It couldn't be simpler. That was the question. Matthew 24:3. You read Mark 13, same thing. Jesus, when are you coming and what's the sign we should look for? Luke 21, same thing. When are you coming? What's the sign? For the next 19 verses, he answers their question. He tells about all the tribulation going to happen. And then at the end of the passage, he says, after the tribulation, the sun and the moon will go dark, and I'll come gather my elect. He answered their question clearly. When's he coming back? After the tribulation, when the sun and the moon go dark. So I cover that in my book. I don't know if I have a copy of it here. What on earth is about to happen, for heaven's sake?
That's a great title.
I wrote a book on that for that reason. It was a dissertation I did for.
Okay.
I wish the pre-trib rapture was true. Man, I wish it was true, but it's not. But we're going to be here.
Has that affected your theology in other ways? I mean, have you now taken a look at the Bible again without the pre-trib rapture and said, that kind of changes my perspective on this or that?
Well, it certainly makes you not want to accumulate too many earthly goods because Jesus said something kind of haunting in Luke 18:8. He said, "When the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth?"
Hmm.
And the answer is kind of understood that no, he may not. I think
Hmm.
probably all the Christians are going to be killed. When it finally came time for the worldwide flood to destroy the whole place, how many people were saved?
Yeah, 8 people.
8.
Yeah.
So I really think the rapture is going to be a non-event. Very few people are going to still be alive to go up when he blows that trumpet. Most are going to be killed.
Hmm.
It's coming.
Wow.
It's happening in many countries. It's already happening right now in many countries,
Hmm.
and we're
Yeah.
headed for it here.
Do you see that as a specific danger for, especially the American Christian? I mean, is that something that could lead to incredible disillusionment when things do get
Absolutely.
ugly? Yeah.
Most Christians are going to, they're so set on Jesus is going to come, save them from any trouble and trials, that when it happens, when the troubles and trials come, they're going to think they got abandoned and think they got left out, and they're going to fall away. And it's so unnecessary. He didn't promise that. He promised a home in heaven. This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. So we need to keep careful tabs on exactly what the Bible says, what's going to happen, not what we want it to say. Read
Hmm.
there's 10 times. He said he's coming back when the sun and the moon go dark.
Hmm.
Mentioned 10 times in the Bible. Isaiah 13:10 is the first one. Revelation 6:12 is the last one. If you want to see what part of the book of Revelation tells us when we leave, Revelation 6:12. We're here for the first 5 seals.
Hmm.
It's not going to be good.
I could believe that. Yes. Wow. Well, this has really been wonderful. I appreciate you taking the time. And I just want to encourage people, if you know somebody that might be up for a debate with Dr. Hovind, let him know. You can go to drdino.com and you can just speak with his secretary about that and set up a wonderful debate. I got to watch a lot of those some years ago, and I found them to be very encouraging, enlightening, and often kind of fun. So they
Yeah,
were pretty cool. But I really appreciate your quest for truth. The goal here is to know the truth, right? And
right.
and that is always what we want to strive for. And I remember some years ago I was teaching my students that said if there's something that our theology holds to and the Bible doesn't, we need to dump our theology. We always
Absolutely.
need to go with what the Bible says, and so that's the goal. And if we'll just keep our heads down and stay humble and just say, Lord, I just want to know the truth, whatever it may be, is all that I want to do. And when we have that attitude, then it makes life a lot easier, because then we're not having to defend our personal um, doctrines, but we're just living on whatever God says. And much easier. We'll let God be in the driver's seat, and yeah, that's definitely a better place to be.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you have any other things that you'd like to share with people before we go, and about the age of the earth, or how to be
Well,
saved, or some whatever's on your heart?
yeah, we did not touch on this topic of what happened to the dinosaurs.
Okay.
If the Bible is true, and I believe it is, dinosaurs lived with people in the Garden of Eden. They were just big lizards. Before the flood, the people lived to be 900. So then the flood comes along, and God says, Noah, I want you to build a boat and take 2 of each kind on board. Well, 2 of each kind, not 2 of each species.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there are about 8,000 kinds of animals in the world. Noah took 2 of every kind. I think he took 2 of every variety of dinosaur, every kind of dinosaur. Probably about 30 different kinds of dinosaurs would be all you would need. Now, Noah was 600 years old when he went on that boat. Okay. I think he'd be smart enough to figure out, I don't have to bring the biggest animals I can find. Bring 2,
Mm-hmm.
be sure to get a pink one and a blue one. I would on the ark, brings babies. They're smaller, they're tougher. They can bounce around in the boat if it gets rough, and babies seem to. Adults fall down and break. Babies will fall down and get hurt and get back up. So, or young ones anyway. So Noah would have brought young dinosaurs, I think. After the flood, the climate was totally different. If you look at Genesis chapter 10 and 11, lifespans dropped off from 900 to 600 to 400 to 200 in a couple generations.
Mm-hmm.
Something changing rapidly. And I covered that in my video number 6 of my series. So the big reptiles couldn't live long enough to even reproduce in some cases. They could not live long enough to get old enough to reach reproductive age. And so they would have died off. Many species went extinct. They died off from climate changes, but secondly, and probably most importantly, they died off from man's hunting.
Mm.
All through history, there are hundreds and hundreds of legends of people killing dragons.
Mm-hmm.
What's this all about? Well, they were killing off dragons. They were killing dinosaurs. And they're probably extinct in most parts of the world, but there have been an awful lot of sightings that indicate a few dinosaurs might still be alive. Loch Ness Monster, Lake Champlain Monster, Ogopogo. I covered that on video 3 for an hour. Sightings of dinosaurs that may still be around. We have really been lied to about the dinosaurs. They're part of God's creation. They're amazing creatures.
Wow. Yeah, there's one Mbumtu, or I forget, in Africa. I remember you talking about that. I can't quite remember the name of it, but
you spell it M-B-E. Mokili Mbembe.
Mbembe. Okay. Mokili Mbembe. There we go.
A missionary friend of mine went there. He was there. He died years ago, but he was there for 42 years. Heard the natives talking about Mokili Mbembe. He said, "What is that?" He said, "Oh, you don't want to get near it. It lives out in the creeks. Even the alligators are afraid of it." He said, "What's it look like?" And they drew a sketch of it, a patasaurus, long neck, long tail dinosaur. He said, "Guys, they live out in the swamps?" "Oh yeah, don't get close. He's not friendly." That was the reaction to it. So
wow.
We have a whole section in our science center here about dinosaurs that may still be alive. There have certainly been tens of thousands of sightings of pterodactyls and apatosauruses still alive in the world in the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now visit Lenox, Alabama, go to Dinosaur Adventureland, or call 855-BIG-DINO, extension 1, and they can send you a list of all our materials, or go to our website, drdino.com, D-R-D-I-N-O. And yeah, we want to help strengthen your faith. The Bible's true. But once you realize, man, that Bible's true, then it ought to hit you like, oh no, the Bible's true. I better start doing what it says. Like, I want to think about that.
Yeah, that's kind of the big deal. Do you ever come to Colorado? I'd love to invite you to speak at our church. It would really be.
I speak this weekend in Tennessee.
Okay.
And I've been to Colorado many times. What city are you near?
Denver.
Okay. I preached in Denver a bunch of times, Colorado Springs. Let's see, where else? Colorado, Fort Collins. I have to go back and look at my calendar, but sure, be glad to come.
Okay. Well, I'll speak with your secretary and we'll see if we can get that set up. That'd be really wonderful.
All right.
So fantastic. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, this was really fun for me personally because I learned so much from you and I have appreciated your ministry. And so I just want to say thank you again for what you've been doing. Keep up the good work. And I wish you the very best in your debate tonight. So
well, thank you. Now, it was 65 degrees today here in Lenox. What was it in Denver today?
Oh, it was probably in the mid 50s.
Wow,
yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it just on Sunday it was up to 60 something. So
good. Okay.
Yeah, we can't complain.
If it gets cold, you bring your church down here. Come visit down here.
No, I'm going to stay here. I like it better here.
Okay.
I like to ski, so can't ski in Alabama unless I heard. Thank you. All right. God bless you. Take care.
Bye-bye. Hey, I'm coming. Hang on, Julie.